Now we can hear you. You can hear us now? Great, thanks. Not to worry. Which one is that coming out of? That needs to be stopped. It's the echo of my voice?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Can we mute this tablet? Or, test 1, 2, 2, 3. One, two, three, four.
Okay, try again.
Check one, check, check. Check one, two, three, four. Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Hey, Colin, can you talk?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we can hear you in the room now. Thanks.
All right, great.
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the June 13th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Mahaley.
Present.
Commissioner Basket.
Here.
Commissioner Moline.
Here.
Commissioner Hunt.
Here.
Commissioner Bangs.
Here.
Commissioner Choi.
Here.
And Chair Brown Eyes.
Here. With that then, motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Hearing no abstentions. And looking at minutes, no minutes. Perfect. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to an item that's not on this evening's agenda? So if it's on the agenda, we'll deal with it when we get there. Otherwise, seeing no hands raised online either, we'll move into our new business. Our first item this evening take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Amelia Brackett. For those of you I have not met, I'm a planner with the city. And I just want to check, can the folks on Zoom see this I assume, but can you see the PowerPoint?
There we go.
Yes.
Yes,
They
okay.
flipped over. And
Thank you
actually,
so
I should go through the whole script. You're right. Yes, thanks. I will now open the public hearing on a request for a plat, minor subdivision, adjusting a lot line between 1147 and 1149 West Enclave. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application materials and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before the Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation and testimony by city staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we'll have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined the meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak in person is asked to complete a speaker card, use the raise hand function if participating by computer, or *9 if calling in by telephone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. 2 people present at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow 1 person to speak for up to a total of 6 minutes. The purpose of the public comment is to receive public testimony, and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The planning commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and address or city of where you live. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing no objections, notification, please.
Yes, this was noticed as required.
Thank you. Now take it away.
Okay. All right, thank you. As this application is a request to adjust the location of a lot line between 2 lots, but it's reviewed through the minor subdivision process. It's at 1147 and 1149 West Enclave. And this is part of the Enclave subdivision. The last replat in this area was in 2023, but it didn't affect these properties. Also, so both of these properties, like the rest of the Enclave subdivision, were destroyed in the Marshall Fire. And the request is to move the lot line from the current, which is shown in yellow on the screen, and then move it south, shown in red. So the applicant is present and has a presentation that can describe this in a little more detail, but in general terms, the reasoning for the adjustment relates to solar panel access on the north lot, and then also some drainage issues from the 2013 flood that they're looking to fix now before selling off the southern lot. So there's 1 modification requested. Otherwise, this application meets all of the Title 16, which is the subdivision requirements. It does not impact the comprehensive plan or other adopted policies. Also of note, so both lots would still support single-family dwelling development. The north property has been rebuilt. The south property is still vacant, but staff did evaluate whether this would be able to meet setbacks, and also just to note that the PUD does have a range of lot sizes in it from minimum to maximum. These both fall within that range as well. The easement vacation basically just moves the existing drainage easements to run parallel with the new lot line. There's no other changes other than just moving them south. So the modification that is requested is to allow a lot depth that's greater than what the minor subdivision criteria require. Those would be on both lots, so it'd be 4.8 times the lot width on the north lot and then 4.4 on the south lot. And the unique circumstance here in terms of staff's analysis is that these lot depth nonconformities previously existed. So there's really no way to adjust this without having that modification. This would not result in an increase in density. It would not alter the character of the neighborhood or of the lots. So staff recommends approval of Resolution 5, Series 2024, which would recommend approval of the 3rd replat of the Enclave and the easement vacation with no conditions. Happy to take any questions that you have, and as I mentioned, the applicant is here as well.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Seeing, go ahead. Commissioner Mahaley.
So I want to poke at the comment about density, if you can go back a slide. So does not increase density. So that is to say the setback requirements are still the same, and with the existing setback requirements for that PUD, that's still a buildable lot?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Commissioners Choi and Bangs, if you want to do the raise hand thing, I'll probably be able to see that. Otherwise, jump up and down wildly, and we'll definitely see that. All right, seeing no additional questions for staff, we'd invite the applicant up. And if you can begin with name and you are a citizen of Louisville.
Sure. Thank you all for your interest in this matter and attending tonight. My name is Thomas Graney. My wife Catherine and I own these properties at 1147 and 1149 West Enclave Circle, and we reside in the 1149 lot. Our new home was completed on 1149 in December of 2023. It has nearly the same footprint and floor plan as the home we lost, and occupied that old home for 22 years prior to losing it. So when you live in a home that long, you get to know very well what you might change and what you didn't like about it. And so at the time of the Marshall Fire, we had been living in our newly remodeled home for just about 10 months. The remodel had taken the best part of 3 years and was driven by flood damage that was sustained in 2013, as was mentioned. That event caused some $75,000 in damage to our old home that required structural engineering interventions and subsequent interior remodeling. The home was never the same afterwards, however, due to a mid-wall foundation fracture and heaving floor slabs that would move seasonally beyond the range of the void framing in the lower level. The old home had a partial daylight basement, which was below grade on the south side of the home, which abuts the neighboring 1147 lot in question. Damage to the old home was the direct result of an unresolved drainage issue that persisted even after the mitigation was performed. And after the foundations were removed following the Marshall Fire, it became obvious that new construction needed to address these problems. So in order to resolve these matters, we elected to excavate fully around our new home, creating a full daylight basement and eliminating expansive soil pressure on the south wall of the home. We also elected to turn the home about 25 degrees, as was mentioned, to a nearly true north-south axis to improve its solar potential. The combination of turning the home and excavating fully around the south side of the home meant we had two choices for grading the lot. We could have chosen to build an engineered retaining wall 10 feet high, which would have added tens of thousands of dollars to the reconstruction costs, or we could construct a block-style retaining wall that steps back from the south side of the house, which did not require engineering and save significant cost. We elected to do that. It became clear that we did not have enough property available on the south side of our home on the 1147 side to do a step-back retaining wall. Moreover, we identified that the height of 1147 at its maximum was shown to be several feet above the existing drainage easement between 1147 and 1149, causing excess water runoff onto our property at 1149. When the opportunity to purchase 1147 from our longtime neighbor arose, we took it. We rotated the home as planned, excavated for a daylight basement with a step-back retaining wall. And as I said, the construction was approved by city planning and engineering and completed as designed. We also reduced the maximum height of 1147 by several feet. We graded the top of the lot off to reduce the amount of water runoff directed at our new home. So in the photos, you can see the step-back retaining wall and the excavation, making that a full daylight basement. Our proposed replat places the retaining wall we created fully on 1149 West Enclave, where our new home is located. It moves only the boundary between 1147 and 1149 West Enclave, as was mentioned. So parties external to the properties are not affected by this. It does not change the lot frontage, where there is driveway access on either lot. It merely rotates that boundary around its northwest corner. Currently, the lot at 1147 has been variously surveyed at 0.94 to 0.96 acres. 0.96 puts it above the PUD limit. 0.94, which is the most recent survey reflects, is what it is now recorded as. So anyway, when we accomplish this proposed replat, we'll reduce from approximately 0.94 nominally to 0.73 of an acre. The lot at 1149, where our home is, will change from a 0.47 acre lot to 0.66 acres, the same size as the lot roughly at 1145 to the south of 1147. So we're not introducing any new access to either lot, not changing the shape of either substantially. We're not eliminating water or sewer taps from 1147. So this will remain a large and buildable lot. We are not attempting to annex 1147 to 1149 or to eliminate a home site, as was mentioned. None of the stakeholders who have been consulted, including Xcel Energy, the city planning and engineering offices, or any other parties, have objected to the proposed replat. The lots that result from this proposed replat will better share property tax assessments, helping a new potential owner of 1147 to reduce their annual assessment. A home consistent with the architecture of others in the Hillside Court and Enclave Circle subdivisions can easily be built on the residual lot 1147 as that property will remain approximately 3 times larger than the average lot size in Louisville, which is around 9,000 to 10,000 square feet. Thank you.
And thank you for your preparation. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Mahaley.
So I guess I'm a little confused. So the wall's already built
Yes, sir.
in entirety? Okay. And so does the wall currently go across the property boundary or what?
Correct.
Okay,
But since we own both, it was allowed by the city.
fair enough. If I remember the staff presentation correctly, so the width is still consistent with the neighborhood, just the aspect ratio width to depth is a little higher. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
We'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here who wanted to comment on this issue? Check. I don't see anybody online raising any hands. No. All right. You have the opportunity for a response and closing statement, but I think you hit it out of the ballpark with that one.
No, I don't have any more comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any staff response or closing statement? I'm seeing none. All right. I will now close the public hearing, and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or other testimony or evidence will be received. Who would like to begin? Commissioner, oh yeah. All right, great. Commissioner Hunt, please.
I don't see any reason not to approve this, and I, as another resident of the Enclave who had drainage problems in my old house, I am sensitive to and appreciate trying to fix drainage problems. A lot of us had problems in the 2013 flood, so
Great.
there's still going to be 2 big lots there, so I'm in support.
Thank you. Commissioner Moline.
Yeah, I'm going to be in support as well. Thanks for your presentation, by the way. And yeah, I'm in support of the staff report, I guess I should say, and agree with the comments in there, and am supportive of this from a modification perspective as well. Yeah, trying to create something that would meet that depth ratio in a location that already exceeds that depth requirement. So I understand the need for the modification, and I'm ready to approve this.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, how about Commissioner Bangs? Are you available?
Yep. Consistent with everyone else, I appreciate the prep from staff as well as the applicant. Helps make the decision pretty straightforward, I think. So yeah, I have no concerns, no questions. I will be in approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Choi.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. Good preparation, wonderful. We can like to see more of that. It does present a good option out of some less than desirable options to begin with. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Commissioner Basket.
I'm also in support. I was a little confused in that we'll clear it up so that you own both properties. So that seems really logical to me, and I am in support.
Thank you, Commissioner Mahaley.
Thank you. Great presentation by staff and the applicant, so thank you for the detail. I'm in support of this. I think it affords a cleaner solution long-term for drainage, so I think this is a win-win for both properties. Coming in, I was a little concerned about the width, but if it's consistent with the neighborhood, I think there's no reason why that should be an issue. With the depth, I don't see that as a problem. So, yeah, I'm in support. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I also am in support of it. Makes perfect sense to me as to how you've arrived at where you've arrived at, and hope for smooth sailing going forward. With that, I would request a roll call vote, please, or a motion first. Why am I off?
Yeah, I'll move approval of resolution number 5, series 2024, a resolution recommending approval of the third replat of the Enclave and the easement vacation as well.
And with that, a second.
Second.
Commissioner Mahaley with the second, and a roll call, please.
Commissioner Mahaley,
Yes.
Commissioner Basket,
Yes.
Commissioner Moline,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Bangs,
Yes.
Commissioner Choi,
Yes.
and Chair Brown Eyes.
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with it all going forward. Thank you. All right, that will bring up our second new business item this evening, a planned unit development for 745 South Pierce. I will now open the public hearing on a request for these allowance of a small storage facility at 745 South Pierce. Purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application materials and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before the Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by city staff and testimony, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we'll have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak in person is asked to complete a speaker card, use the raise hand function if participating by computer, or *9 if calling in by telephone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. 2 people present at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow one person to speak for up to a total of 6 minutes. The purpose of public comment is to receive public testimony and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing. No further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and city of residence. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing no objections, do we have notification?
Notification has been satisfied.
Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Matt Post, Senior Planner on staff here on the Community Development team. We'll be presenting a final plan unit development application this evening to allow a small storage facility at 745 South Pierce Avenue in the Colorado Technology Center. Quick note, the memos that were just passed out were an applicant memo that wasn't included in the staff packet. It's beneficial for you all to have that, as it was a narrative for the relief that's been requested this evening by the applicant. So it's covered in the presentation here, but you all can follow along in what's in the packet. Presented here is an aerial of the site.
Was that packet sent out electronically as well?
We can send it out electronically. I can shoot a quick email here if we want to maybe pause the presentation quickly, if that's agreeable. I can send that to.
That would be helpful if you can. Thank you.
I don't think your mic is on. Okay, yeah, that would be fantastic. It is in the folder. It's in the file folder under fourth submittal, and it should be under memo request. Great, perfect. Okay, wait. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, again, so continuing on here, the subject property is approximately 2.16 acres in size. Is currently vacant. As mentioned, it is located in the CTC and is zoned industrial. South Pierce Avenue bounds the site to the east. To the north and the south are vacant properties and existing commercial and industrial uses. On the west side, the site is bounded by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. This particular piece of property was subdivided via the Colorado Technological Center filing number 1 plat in 1979. Moving into the proposal, this is an image of the proposed site plan. The building is favoring the north side of the site to accommodate a shared access drive on the south side with the south property. And this proposal includes a 32,367 square foot, again, small storage facility. Our zoning ordinance defines this use as a small storage facility, otherwise more commonly known as a self-storage facility. A detention and water quality pond are proposed on the east side of the site with a native seed, a detention mix, and the applicant is proposing 11 parking spaces on this particular site and 3 vehicle loading spaces that will serve as a customer-oriented service entrance. Under the Industrial Development Design Guidelines and Standards, or the IDDSG, as I'm sure you all are familiar, this site would actually be required to be parked at 32 spaces as a warehouse use. So we'll discuss that further on in the slide. That's also directly related to the memo that was provided to you via the applicant this evening. Electric vehicle parking is proposed and is in conformance with adopted EVCS policy. There's a prominent main entrance on the southeast side of the building that provides customer access to an on-site leasing office, and then a second recessed service-oriented entrance on the south side of the building, and you can see that pretty clearly on the site plan there. The shared access drive on the south side of the site is encouraged by the Industrial Development Design Guidelines. The reason for that would be to decrease the number of curb cuts in the right-of-way, and then also reduce any conflict between entering and exiting vehicles. So staff encourage a shared access point when it can be worked out between property owners. And so the site layout complies with all industrial development design guideline standards, including setback, height, internal circulation, and grading and drainage, except for the waivers and the relief, which is we will discuss later on in the presentation. This particular slide includes the proposed east and south elevations. The east elevation, which is the top elevation, is the primary facade. That would be the elevation that faces South Pierce Avenue. The south elevation would be visible from Dillon Road because of the height of the structure. The proposed architecture includes masonry, stucco, architecturally appropriate metal panels, and then a variety of massing articulation textures, colors, and heights. And the color palette will consist of a neutral tan with accents of cedar red. So again, in line with the neutral palettes required by the Industrial Design Guidelines. Again, the corner entrance here provides a prominent defining architectural feature that includes a 3-story wraparound with transparent glass. You can see that here on the elevation as well. Metal trellises were provided on the east elevation to provide additional architectural interest, including variation in the facade. Again, in line with the intent of the design guidelines of the industrial district. This particular slide is a rendering provided by the applicant that highlights the prominent entry point on the southeast corner. You can also see the articulation on the south side facade here, the variation in materials, and then also the variation in height provided by the parapet walls, both south side and east side elevations. The proposed landscaping plan meets and exceeds the minimum requirements, notwithstanding a waiver request to limit tree plantings in the required buffer area on the north side of the site. And again, we'll discuss that in later slides, but the applicant has included those required trees that should be on the north side of the site on the east side of the site, so there hasn't been a reduction in trees. They've been moved to the native grass area on the west side of the site. The application also includes low water plantings and drought tolerant when established plantings. The majority of the site includes rock mulch and native grass, so it does meet our standards for low water indigenous plantings as well. And so with that, we'll jump into the first waiver request here, specifically waiver number 1. And so section 52A1 of the Industrial Design Guidelines requires a 10-foot wide landscape buffer between properties within the same zone district. You can see presented on the image here, what on the north side, exactly where that buffer would apply. What it states is that every 30 linear feet, a tree is required for exactly half of the lot depth. And then in addition to those trees would be required shrubs and ground cover. In green, highlighted in green, you can see that there is a proposed storm drain in the north side setback area, which would preclude tree plantings in that buffer. So based on the relatively narrow configuration of the site, the encouraged and provided shared access on the south side of the site, and the requirements for on-site detention and water quality for a site of this size, staff recognize that there's a peculiar condition on this particular property. Further, the lot to the north is also zoned industrial with the warehouse use. So staff find that the waiver request is reasonable to not require the trees on the north side because the buffer standards are traditionally intended to provide a barrier between incompatible uses. And we have 2 industrial uses here. And again, the applicant has provided those trees on the west side of the site. Quick note on the south side of the site, there is a shared access point there. And so this buffer standard would apply. However, when a shared access is proposed, the requirement is that an 8-foot median be included with plantings in it that has been provided by the applicant. The buffer also exists on the west side of the site as well, and so the buffer standard is satisfied on the west side of the site. So we're looking at just the north side for the request for relief via the waiver.
And just, that's a subsurface storm drain?
Yes, yes it is.
Thanks.
And it leads directly to the detention area, which is, you can see highlighted there
right,
at the,
that drains
on
into
the
it, yeah.
east side of the site.
Daylight's there, yeah.
So waiver number 2 is a request for relief from section 411 of the Louisville Sign Code, which allows for a maximum of 2 wall signs, one on a primary street frontage and one on a secondary street frontage. Waivers and or variances can only be approved for signs via the PUD process. So the applicant has engaged or requested a waiver with this PUD application. So there's only one primary frontage, so the applicant is technically only allowed 1 sign. Again, if they had a secondary frontage, they would be allowed 2 signs here. But the applicant is proposing 1 additional wall sign on the west elevation, again, for a total of 2 wall signs. That west elevation faces the railway and a vacant property. I'm not sure what the zoning is. I believe it's likely open space or agricultural, but that west elevation is highly visible from Dillon Road. The sign that's proposed is within the size limitation allowances for a secondary frontage. And so based on the request and the visibility from Dillon Road, staff find the request to be consistent with the intent and limitations of the sign code. The third request for relief is not a waiver, but is a parking reduction request. So those are separate items in the ordinance, and a parking reduction request would have to be made. So pursuant to section 1720.080 of the municipal code, the city council may increase or decrease the number of required parking spaces in consideration of a number of factors, including the parking needs of non-dwelling users. So based on the parking standards of the IDDSG, I believe I mentioned this already, this site would be required to provide 32 parking spaces. It would be considered a warehouse use. Our use standards as they relate to parking don't go quite as granular as would be necessary to actually apply an appropriate parking standard for a use such as this. And so the applicant asserts that based on the nature of the use, the number of anticipated employees, the site design and similar uses in the area, and utilization of the recessed customer loading area, which provides an additional 3 spaces, that a reduced parking allowance will adequately serve guests and employees and will not result in a negative impact on adjacent property owners and the right-of-way. Quick note that the CTC Owners Association prohibits parking on streets in CTC. You may all be aware of that, but that is a prohibition. That's a private covenant that the applicant would have to abide by. And so based on the nature of the use and the reduction in impervious surface, staff again find the request to be reasonable and consistent with the intent of the adopted development. And in the packets that I handed out to you, if you look on the back of page 2, you'll see actually some examples of similar uses in the metro area, their square footage and how they're parked. The applicant also provided additional information from an industry perspective on what a common parking standard is and then what traffic volumes typically are for a use such as this. And so with that, staff have found that the application is in compliance with the Louisville Municipal Code and with the waivers and parking reduction requested, that the application would also be in compliance with the industrial design guidelines. So therefore, staff recommend approval of Resolution 6, Series 2024, regarding a PUD for small storage facility building at 745 South Pierce Avenue on the condition that the applicant establish and record a shared access easement if one is not present with the property to the south concurrent with the proposed shared access point prior to building permit application. And then record of that recorded easement would be provided to the city for record. And that concludes staff presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Questions of staff? Commissioner Baskett, please.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you know how much staff is anticipated?
That would be a question for the applicant.
Commissioner Mahaley.
I thought I saw it earlier, but I can't find it now that I'm on the spot. In terms of the electric charging requirement, so is that still consistent with the number of spaces proposed? Is that still consistent with the current number of spaces, or how does that ratio work out from what the actual requirement is versus
Right.
what's proposed?
Yeah, so we apply the requirement based on the number of spaces proposed. So we did that on 11 spaces.
So it's still compliant based on the current.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Based on the proposed, the
Sorry, based
reduced
on-
number of spaces.
That's what I mean. Thank you.
Correct.
Additional questions? I'm curious Commissioner Choi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. On the site plan, there are two gates with access pads. And they're both identified to have Knox boxes, excuse me. The pad to the east, the gate to the east has dimensionality provided, but the gate to the west does not have the dimension provided. And I don't believe that clearance is called out like it is on the other east side. I know that is also identified as a fire lane, but just for clarification, that is also the lane that customers would use to potentially park a box truck and unload personal items to go inside and put in the storage units. Is that correct?
Correct. And Louisville Fire did sign off on this proposal with no additional comments.
Okay.
Commissioner Choi, I'm guessing you're suggesting that maybe that needs to be revisited. Is that the issue? Like that it was just an oversight perhaps, or?
No, I'm not one to second guess the review of the Louisville Fire Protection District. I just also know, having seen, the use of self-storage facilities, that folks don't always potentially park right up against the side and allow a clearance to the side, and it is a note that just kind of called out during my review of this. That appears to be a relatively tight clearance with, I think, just 32 feet side to side along that whole lane.
Great, thanks.
I have one other question, Chair. I didn't see anywhere in the application that any of the location of mechanical equipment was going to be called out. And I know that with the tighter clearances, particularly on the north side, and then some of the landscaping, is the intent to have mechanical equipment roof mounted, or is there going to be ground mounted mechanical equipment?
I would imagine that this would be roof mounted at this point, but I'll allow the applicant to answer that question as well. There is a transformer that's on the site plan. It's just east of the building, but I'll let the applicant answer that question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bangs.
Yeah, thanks again for the city staff report. Understand the request for an exemption on the signage, and it says that lighting is compliant. Are there any concerns about the hours of lighting? I understand the business hours, but do we have a requirement for illumination of the building, particularly the signage?
I'd have to review the sign code, Commissioner Bangs, but I would say that there is also a separate permit required for the actual signage here. So if any decision that would occur tonight regarding the sign would simply allow the location and size, the applicant would still be required to submit an actual sign permit for review, and that's where we would review the details of the sign permit, including hours of operation and lighting at that point.
Okay, thank you.
I'm particularly interested in what is that adjacent zoning, because it's a big difference whether it's agriculture or otherwise.
We can.
So if you could look that up, I don't know if you want to do that now or whether we could do that as the applicant is making their presentation. Another issue I wanted to discuss was, so with the lot coverage, the reduction of parking spaces, is that literally just going into more buildable?
I would say yes. I think the applicant indicates in their narrative that is in your staff packet that a reduction in spaces would lead to a reduction in leasable space for the applicant. Yes.
Reduction of leasable space?
A
Increase.
reduction in lease. Yeah, I believe that's the language in the narrative that the applicant provided. Yes.
How would?
You mean additional spaces would mean a reduction?
I'm sorry.
Increase of-
Additional. Yeah, I apologize. If additional parking spaces required on site would lead to a reduction in leasable space in the building,
Right,
and that's that's in the applicant narrative in the staff packet.
right. And then as far as the lot coverage is as proposed, do you have any numbers?
I don't have the exact number, but it is in compliance with lot coverage, specifically open space standard to 25% landscaping.
Got it.
It is in compliance.
All right, great. Thanks. Any additional questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, thank you. If you could look into that one zoning issue, and then I would invite the applicant up.
While they're coming up, the property to the west is the railroad right-of-way. That's zoned industrial, and then across from that is zoned planned community commercial.
Planned
So
community.
it's all commercial or industrial straight west. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Perfect. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mark Delgado with DCB Construction. I'm an architect with DCB, and I'm also joined by the ownership group, Dom Kickbush, and my associate, another architect with DCB, Stephanie Fernandez. Thank you. Just wanted to thank the commission for having us here today, and thank you, Matt, for the presentation. I'm going to see if I cannot lift this, so I'm going to try to pull it a little bit closer.
Yeah, if you can do city of residence too, please.
Yeah.
No, what is your city as
Oh, yes,
residence?
Denver, Colorado.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So I do want to make sure to address the kind of initial comments that came forth, but just to add to Matt's presentation, as far as the site kind of logistics and siting, I did want to touch on with this illustrative landscape plan, just the nature of landscape treatments, buffers, specifically on the west against the railroad, the existing industrial properties on the north and south, where Matt had described that we're kind of providing an overabundance of plantings to offset that issue that we have with the storm line. And then we also are fully in compliant with the drainage requirements with Louisville, and water quality and detention are provided in the pond located on the far east side of the property. And then on the south edge, we had discussed earlier that there is the 8-foot landscape buffer that meets the requirements for buffering on the south side. And as far as fire access, we have gone through and vetted to ensure fire is okay with all the turnarounds, the radiuses, and the gates, and I'll touch on the gates as we get, as I kind of go through the list of some of the earlier concerns that were brought up. Should be one more page to this. Okay, that. There we go. There we go. The 2D elevations were discussed earlier with Matt. We do have a wide range of natural color variation and articulation that we've worked hand in hand with the planning department to try to ensure that we are meeting the industrial standards, along with the primary focus of the corner element that that's depicted here, and amenity zone as well at the front area of the property. We're also providing a pedestrian connection to the right-of-way from the leasing office, and that is depicted on the site plan drawings. And this is the view. It's a close-up view, but this is the view that you would get from Dillon Road on the signage with the request to add the sign piece to the west facade, so that eastbound traffic traveling on Dillon Road would be able to acknowledge the property. So I'll jump into any questions, but I would like to touch on a couple of the requests that came earlier. So on our site plan, the first piece will be related to the fire access and the gates. So the dimensions are not shown on the gates, but the actual keynote does identify that the 20-foot gate is being provided, and that's what the fire department approved. So I don't think there's an issue with the width of the gate. It's not shown graphically with the dimension string, but it is shown in the keynote on that gate. And then the concern in regards to the width, so that fire lane is actually increased in size. So a typical fire lane would be about 20 feet. The width of that drive area there is 35 feet. So there's additional space along that drive to, there is no plan for vehicles to park there, but should something happen to that effect, we've kind of gone above and beyond on that width of what a normal fire lane would be, which would be typically 20 feet, so we're at 35 feet to address some of those potential circulation issues. On the parking reduction request, the proposed 14 spaces in total is probably situated about a little less than double on what a typical facility in the Denver metro area or even nationally would have, and we provided some backup to those numbers. But as a frame of reference for everybody, the developer of this project, DOM, they operate other storage facilities, and we were able to provide actual parking counts of those other facilities and usage counts. And so, for example, their project in Frederick, which is currently in lease up, is currently attracting an estimated, once it is fully leased up, 28 customers per day. So if you track that to actual parking spaces that you need, it's significantly lower. And they also operate the facility that's adjacent to this. It's about 2 blocks away, or 2 properties to the east, Dillon Road Storage. That's fully operational, and they're getting 33 trips per day. And so generally, it's a facility of this size would yield maybe 7 or 8 max, and we're at the 14 spaces. So we definitely don't see a concern there. And the space actually was not directly related to the rentable area. We actually are exceeding landscape requirements by 5%. So I'd say it's a little bit of a balance there. There's, if the law was, if there was no way to get around it, we probably could provide the 32 spaces, but we'd have a little bit less building and a little bit less landscaped area. So as far as the rooftop units, those are being located behind parapets, so they're not visible. If they were visible, they would have to be obviously screened, but the parapets should be tall enough to address those rooftop unit screens. So hopefully that addresses the initial questions, but I did want to stick around here and hopefully answer any other questions related to the proposal. So, and staff-wise, there would typically be one on-site manager running the facility. So if that's kind of taking into account with parking requirements, there typically would be one. During early lease-up, there might be a second employee to help, but that would not be a permanent situation. So there'd be kind of a max of 2, but long-term, you'd be looking at probably just the one employee. So.
Great, thank you. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Mahaley.
So could you help clarify a little bit? So lease up, that means they're still in the process of renting out the space and haven't completed that process?
Yeah.
So, when it says projected 28, what % usage or % lease out is that assuming?
That current facility is at, I believe you're around 40%, Dom, at Glacier Park?
Closer to about 44 now.
44%.
So.
And then similar question for the facility to the east. So I know that's fully operational. What percentage is that in terms of actual use?
Dillon Road Storage occupancy rate?
About 96, okay. And similarly, these numbers that are provided, is there like a national average of what?
Yeah, we use often when we do face some questions regarding parking, there's some publications out there, but we did provide an excerpt from the, who would have thought there's a self-storage almanac, but we provided an excerpt from there, and it actually goes regionally, and so they look at various factors. They look at region, size of facility, number of units, and a few factors like that. And in those statistics, we're sitting in the 7 to 8 parking stall range.
Well, and I saw that, and I saw the breakdown differences between rural and suburban. I'm just curious if there's like a assumed use percentage of the facility. What I'm getting at is if we're fully booked in the storage facility, how many are we actually expecting in terms of customers per day?
So we would be around 600 units.
Okay, yeah, but so, and if it's fully booked, how many customers per day would we expect?
This would be very similar to the Dillon Road, so you'd be in that 30 to 40 people per day. Yeah. Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Moline.
Yeah, just a few more questions on parking. And I think it's great that we are looking for ways to reduce impervious surface. So I'm certainly not opposed to that at all. I guess my question is, do you sort of have a backup plan? Like if perchance there would be more people arriving or trends kind of change, and I appreciate the research that you've done and the data that you provided. I'm just curious, your site looks awfully tight given, the detention, the access around the other side. I mean, do you have sort of an alternate plan if, again, things change and you need to have more parking than you have here? What would you do?
Worst case, you have an extra 5% of landscaped area, which we would definitely not want to do. But I think the plan from the get-go was that when asking for the reduction is that we wanted to go above and beyond what is even required and what nationally is typically built for these facilities. And that's why we increased that from, again, we've designed facilities with 6 or 7 at this size, but that's why we bumped it to the 14 is to ensure that we had that backup. And again, there's even with the areas that are situated currently on the site, there's if we had to, we could add parking spaces. It's just wanting to preserve that landscaped area and kind of the design and the buffers as it's kind of been laid out.
Could you see yourselves exploring, like, I assume just if things changed and trends changed and you had more traffic than you anticipated, I mean, could you look at like leasing stuff? I can't remember if we even allow this, but leasing offsite at one of the adjacent other properties, or I mean, what are your
benefit there is is that Dom operates a facility that's a couple blocks away that would be able to kind of offload that. So that's another, and that facility, if you look at it, has a lot less density because it's your single story type. This is a slightly different product, but the good thing is that they would be able to kind of mitigate between those two facilities on if for some reason the just the trends were to change as far as the traffic counts and stuff. But again, that's not anticipated at this time. But there's definitely flexibility. So
okay, good, thanks. I just was, it just like like I said, my concern is the site seems kind of tight, and if you ran into concerns, I just wondered how you were going to accommodate that. So thanks, I appreciate it.
Commissioner Hunt.
Kind of more on the parking issue. I'm not as familiar. I haven't used a lot of these sites, but you have the little bay that goes in. Mm-hmm. Is it the operational experience that most people like pull into that little bay? I mean, do you have statistics on how long people actually spend at these facilities when they're accessing their units?
Yeah, there's definitely statistics on that and everything. Just so something that maybe you'd have to kind of look through the narrative, but security is a very important piece to these facilities and video surveillance. But yeah, the general kind of most of the activity is happening at that recessed covered loading area that's provided. So That's
And
correct.
I assume like people don't spend like a long time parked there. They go in, they unload
No,
their stuff,
it's-
they move
And
their
that's
car.
where, yeah,
Okay.
and ultimately it's, let's say, you're getting 30 to 40 visitors per day, that's spread out over an entire day. There really isn't like like a peak rush hour. It's more gradual throughout the day is what the statistics
Right.
kind of show, so.
Is this open like access anytime, or are there times when it's closed?
No, so there'll be office hours where it's fully staffed, and then, but after, there are kind of post office hours that go to about 9 p.m. So
Yeah, fully staffed with the one person.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah, I think that's kind of the nature of
Yeah,
how
okay.
it typically works. So
That's what I thought. Thank
yeah.
you.
Discussing the sign a little bit, want to stir the pot a little bit there. I believe what would be allowed and what's proposed essentially is an internally lit sign, and I don't believe we have any curfew on that currently. I don't know I don't think we have any specific references on like lumen output for this type of a sign.
We do not know.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that aspect of it and how that could be perhaps self-policed or what staff feels would be appropriate for that location.
I would say that if there is a concern that the lumens may exceed, well, I will say this: we have a lighting ordinance that applies in the industrial district. It doesn't explicitly exclude signage, so I believe that there would be an opportunity to review that sign in conjunction with the photometric plan if we feel that there is a concern with the sign, and then enforce the lighting standards in the industrial design guidelines. I believe that opportunity exists.
Can I just add clarifications? Chair, is your concern off-site light from the sign?
Yeah, and I mean, understandably, from a business perspective, the visibility is needed.
Yep.
And yet, from a public perspective of more lit signs
Okay,
at
yeah.
nighttime in areas that we used to think of were kind of quiet,
Okay.
empty places.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Seeing none? Thank you. I'll open it up to, yes, please.
I have one addition here. We just pulled up the sign code, actually. I apologize. We have obviously multiple uses and districts broke down and where lighting is permitted. Internally illuminated signs are not permitted in the industrial zone district. So an internally illuminated sign would not be permitted.
Ah, okay. So
Yeah.
it's a little different than what appears in the rendering, yeah?
Yeah, it's white. It's a little kind of illustrative, I guess. But yeah, I think regardless, it sounds like as we got through the signage permitting phase, we probably would have found
Realize
out
that, yeah. Definitely.
But,
All right.
But yeah, thank you for
Great, thanks, that helps, appreciate it. All right, with that then, I'll open it up to public comment. And I would also, at this time, like to enter the constructions from, or, sorry, the letter from DCB dated April 3rd, 2024, addressed to Matt Post into public comment.
So
Can I have a
moved.
motion to do, thank you, motion and a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Do we have any public comment? All right, seeing none online either, we will move through that. You have the opportunity for a closing statement if you should care to share one with us.
No, thank you. If there are any other questions, happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any staff closing response or closing statement?
None at this time.
Thank you. All right. I'll now close the public hearing. You could have a seat now. I'll now close the public hearing and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or other testimony or evidence will be received. Who would like to begin? And you can have a seat now. Thank you. Any thoughts from afar?
Yeah, Chair Brown.
Please, Commissioner Bangs.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to support the application. My concern, you built on the same question I asked earlier about signage and illumination. Seems like that can be addressed with the signage application, but to your point, the only concern I have is this will appear on the horizon, simply didn't exist before. So it would be good to understand, as you described, the curfew and the strength of the potential light pollution out of hours. That's all.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Choi.
Thanks, Chair. Definitely a couple of considerations that are outside the straight and narrow code, but I think that the applicant has addressed them appropriately, and I appreciate the collaboration with the Fire Protection District to get their buy-in prior to community council. I would be in support of this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahaley.
I think I'm generally in support. I think I've touched on the concerns that we've discussed already. I think the three parts of the waiver, I think the tree waiver I'm less concerned about, given the zone to the north is the same, and it seems like there's a good amount of trees in the back. So overall, I think it's a good deal for Louisville. So I'm not concerned about the tree waiver. The sign, I share your concern. I think objectively just having a second sign on the back is okay, but I think we would need to work the illumination. So assuming that that's covered by the sign application and holds to the current ordinance, I think I'm in favor of that as well. I came in a bit skeptical about the parking. The additional handout, I think, helps in the explanation and the breakdown. Acknowledging that, if this were at full capacity, they could be even larger than some of the numbers they're saying. But with the hours described, it does seem like they'd still have some additional parking spaces. Also acknowledging that where it is in the complex, I know that the tech center, you're not supposed to park on the street. But if that were to happen, especially there, that's right near the entrance and exit to the complex, I believe. So that's a particularly busy stretch of street. So that's really not an option here. So I'm still a little uneasy about the number of parking, but I'm not advocating for an abundance of pavement. Green space is better. But from a safety perspective, I think we're close. So I think I'm in favor of that as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Baskett.
I'm comfortable with the application, given the information provided by the applicant and staff. My MO is less parking whenever you can do it, so I am comfortable with that, and I'd rather see the landscaping there in the so we don't have all that impervious area. Thank you.
Commissioner Moline.
Yeah, boy, I appreciate the fellow commissioner comments, and I agree with those. Thanks, applicants, for the proposal and your presentation, and staff as well. Yeah, I'm going to be in support of this and agree with the previous comments about trees and the tree waiver and the sign waiver and request, and then also on the parking reduction. And I maybe contrary to my line of questioning, I also am excited that we would have less parking. Again, the site just seems kind of tight, and just wanted to hear that from the applicant. So, yep, I'll be in support. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt.
I think I can't improve on everybody else's comments, so I won't belabor them. I will support this as well. It seems like a well thought out plan, and I also like less parking, more trees, and I know how these storage units are used. We're not going to have people parking there for long periods of time, so I'm not too concerned about that. So,
thank you. I'm also in favor of it as proposed. I would note, however, that we're not really trading parking spaces for landscaped area on much of a level, right? So we're still getting hardscape. It's in the form of a roof. It's in the form of space that will be utilized from an economic perspective which is likely good for the city on a macroeconomic level. But environmentally, it's not that trading for a softscape. And I do look forward, I think the sign will be what it needs to be at this point. So thanks for looking into that. With that, then, I would I would invite a motion.
Motion to approve.
For, Resolution 6.
Resolution 6, Series 2024.
Thank you for the motion in the second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Mahaley,
Yes.
Commissioner Basket,
Yes.
Commissioner Mullane,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Bangs, Commissioner Choi,
Yes.
and Chair Brown Eyes.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all. Good luck moving forward with it all. All right, how about a 6-minute break, reconvening at 7:40? 5 minutes.
Sure. With no further public hearing items, I need to drop off for the evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noting that Commissioner Choi is leaving at this time. Thank you. 7:35.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Great. If we can reconvene for a comprehensive plan update and discussion.
Thank you. Yes, so Jeff Hurt, Planning Manager in Community Development. I'm here for what's probably going to be a monthly update to Planning Commission throughout the life of the project, but do have a specific purpose tonight. First, we wanted to share the final results from the first round of community engagement. At your last meeting, we gave you sort of the preliminary results. So you've got the full results in your packet, lots of information to dive into. But specifically tonight, we wanted to share a draft of the vision and value statements that would go into the comp plan and would be the basis for upcoming community engagement, and then a schedule update. So the first round of community engagement, we reported last month a bit on this, but just to remind you, we had over 2,000 people that engaged, which is a great number. This is the first of at least 3 rounds of community engagement we're going to do in this project. Lots of methods to reach people. The focus of the content and the questions was around values, what's most important to you as a community, and sort of building that foundation for the project going forward. I wanted to highlight a couple things from the results from that engagement. A little bit redundant from your last meeting, maybe a reminder, but I think a lot of this is new information. So first was really good. We had really good distribution geographically across the city, across the 3 wards. These are optional questions, but about 1,500 people answered. So good geographic distribution across different neighborhoods. Very high in the owner category of responses, which is not surprising. Over 90% were owners. The city as a whole, for reference, is I think about 70% owners. So that's off from what our actual profile is. So that tells us we need to work more on engaging with renters. Good news is we heard from over 100 renters, which is much more than we hear from typically on a project like this. So what we asked in the first round of engagement, in part, was a reaction to the 2013 values, the 2013 comp plan values. And so we had folks rank them. They all scored well. The highest rated were around safe neighborhoods and integrated open space and trail networks. The lowest, not meaning they're not supported, but just lowest priority to people, were related to our city's heritage and civic participation and volunteerism. And we had several open-ended questions in the online survey and at the open house. One of them was, what are your biggest hopes for the future of Louisville? And so there were many, many responses to this question. And so our consultants went through an exercise of coding the different responses based on key themes. And these are some of the biggest themes that came up, which probably aren't surprising. There's a lot underneath each of these. These are subjective terms, which we're hoping to drill down further on. But affordable housing, preservation of small town feel, safety related to environmental sustainability. That's around obviously wildfire risk, but also like water consumption and usage and things of that nature. Downtown revitalization, again, this means different things to different people. Improved transportation infrastructure and balanced growth and smart development were the key themes from that particular open-ended question. It's a small font, but one of the interesting questions we asked was, what would you like to see emphasized in future development? And we give a whole list of options. The top scoring one was dedication of open space and public lands. Basically tied with that is opportunity for small business development, business-friendly development, and then third was housing affordability. Down lower, for example, you'll see ease, convenience of parking. People not as concerned about that. That tells us something. And related to what you just talked about. So we are planning to do another engagement window in the summer months to sort of take advantage of people being out and about in different events and opportunities to intercept people kind of where they're at. And our intent with this next round of engagement is to do a deeper dive on the vision and value statements to get a sort of a better sense of what these really important but subjective words mean to people. And I'll talk a minute here about sort of the purpose of these vision and values statements and what they're going to be used for. But essentially, a really, really important part of the process is to get a nuanced and accurate understanding of what these mean to people. So we're planning to do that. This was not a planned window of engagement, so we as staff are taking this on. We felt it was important to do an interim window between this and the next one, which will be later this fall. We'll talk about around future scenarios, growth scenarios, trade-offs, things like that. But so we're taking this on, and we think it's a good idea. So just wanted to highlight, I think a lot of people struggle with these types of activities because they see it as pretty squishy. There's a lot of squishy language. How do you apply these? How do you use these things? And so I wanted to just highlight the importance of them and kind of what they mean. So the vision statement, a kind of a simple way of putting it is that's the future state, right? It's hopefully the clean statement of our future state of what we want to be as a community. And then the values or the principles or whatever you want to call them kind of go underneath that. And sort of how do you work toward that future state and what's going to guide you along the way. So examples of how these particular vision and values would be used. It could be really broad, but specifically they're going to be an organizing element for the plan. So once we get these down, a lot of the policies will tie to these values and vision statements, and even all the way down to the future land use map and future land use choices, they will tie to these. So the words become really important, which is why we're doing this activity. And we hope and expect in the future they can be used for things like budgeting and things like that, but also like when you have specific development proposals before you as Planning Commission, these will be ideally used to evaluate those in some way. Very important to get the wording down. And so what we're planning to do with the community engagement is, one, ask the community, are these the right values and what concepts are missing? And basically asking the community to clarify what these things mean to you. So what does welcoming and inclusive mean? What does small town mean? What do these very subjective things mean to you? And so we've got a creative team of people kind of working on how can you, in kind of a snappy, kind of intercept kind of way, get feedback on those kinds of questions. And so maybe the last thing I'll say before moving on is the intent, so I'll walk through the vision and values draft. The intent behind this activity is to ask the community about the values with the idea that they fill in the qualifying language, right? So these values that I'll walk through are what you'll see as sort of the tagline, welcoming and inclusive. And the idea behind the engagement is to have the community help us kind of fill in the subtext that goes underneath that. And so the visual up on the screen here that I know you can't read is from the 2013 plan, where you basically have qualifying, clarifying language underneath each of these. So the idea with the engagement is help us figure out what that qualifying language is. And so I'll just read through these and we can circle back to them. The idea again tonight is just to share, give you a preview of the draft that we would share with the community to get input here soon. We're not affirming them tonight. We can get into wordsmithing if you'd like, happy to do that. Council did a bit recently. But what do you think about these? Are these ready for prime time? What adjustments would you like to see before we got to the community? So the vision statement, which is much shorter than the one from 2013, and we're hoping it stays that way, but the vision statement is Louisville is committed to being a healthy, equitable, resilient, and sustainable community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive now and for future generations. We welcome a vibrant future that respects our past and preserves our small town atmosphere. And I'll get into council's input on this. They already gave us some input on this. And the draft values, I'll go through quickly. So Louisville is a welcoming, inclusive, and supportive community where we support safe, established, and distinct neighborhoods. We value parks, open spaces, and natural areas as essential community infrastructure. We prioritize environmental sustainability and resilience. We support vibrant commercial areas. We support transportation choices and connections to places for all abilities. We support development that maintains or enhances our unique quality of life. And we value transparent and responsible local government. So this is the exact language that was presented to council a couple weeks ago. Didn't make any changes based on their input. I'll share what council's feedback was, and this is a little bit out of sequence. We'd like to probably ask you first and then go to council, but this is the way it kind of went down. So their input on this language, as just presented, was one, it feels a bit antiquated in some places. Modernize the language, make it a little bit more user-friendly. There were mixed opinions on the phrase small town. That's a loaded term to a lot of folks, and we could kind of talk about that. And so something to drill down on further. We want to state that we're open to and accept that we need to evolve and adapt to changes as a community. Clarify who we are welcoming to. We just say we're welcoming, but welcoming to who? More explicitly address housing affordability. Council felt that the statement that we're welcoming and inclusive needs to be a little bit more direct about housing affordability. And so that was one of the comments. to consider separating parks from open space as two distinct topics and sets of values, clarify that responsibility means fiscal responsibility as a city, and to recognize we are part of a regional context. So the idea behind these comments was not necessarily that this all needs to be edits to the values, but for this to be somehow reflected, whether it's through imagery or supplemental text, to make sure that people know that this is what we're talking about. Again, for input, this is the draft version we're iterating on. So the schedule, I'll just highlight a couple things and want to listen to your input. The schedule first is we're starting this next round of engagement here soon through June and July. We're planning to come back to Planning Commission on August 8th for a draft set of vision and values that reflects the community input. And so it'll look a little different, I'm sure, than what we just presented. But the idea is for Planning Commission hopefully to recommend to City Council confirmation of them, affirmation of them, whatever the terminology we want to use is. And then on August 20th, we have scheduled for City Council to confirm the vision and values as sort of sanctioning them as these are the right foundation to start building off of for the plan development. And then the next round of engagement, which is the one we had planned, is the bigger one, which would happen in and around October, where we would have, and our consultants would help us prepare future growth scenarios and the trade-offs related to those, and some other key policy choices. So, and then this is the schedule in just table format. I'm happy to come back to. Again, target date of adoption going into summer, probably late summer-ish of 2025. Wanted to hit one thing real quick just to update you. So House Bill 1313, which I think we briefly talked about last time, was a new state law that was signed into law recently. And this is the one that essentially mandates that cities, including Louisville, have zoning in place that allows a certain residential density in our transit areas. And so this is a really big deal. We're trying to get our head around exactly what it means and how it plays into the comp plan, which it will. But essentially this bill, as a reminder for those that are familiar, says that within our transit areas, and I have a map on the next slide, we have to have a residential zoning density that allows for a certain number of dwelling units per acre on average across the transit area. That number is high. It's 40 dwelling units per acre, and we've confirmed that's the right number. And so for context, and to give you a sense of why we're making you aware of this and that we're looking into this closely, our highest intensity zone district is 20 dwelling units per acre. That's just a small pocket of DLO right across the tracks here that allows that. This would say the state is saying that we, as a city, have to have residential zoning that on average allows 40 dwelling. Doesn't mean we have to build that number of units or permit them. There's all kinds of provisions in there about our ability to serve them in terms of units, in terms of water capacity and things like that, but zoning capacity. So happy to talk more about this, but we're reaching out to our state representatives and trying to figure out exactly what this means, but we did confirm that it does apply to Louisville. And here's the map of the areas that it would apply to. So basically within a half a mile of the McCaslin Park and Ride, and then within a quarter mile of the Dash route, which is the green line on the screen. And the areas in yellow are the transit areas defined by the bill, where we would have to have, again, an average density of, our understanding is 40 dwelling units per acre. There's all kinds of devils in the details stuff about that in terms of where you put the density, how you allocate it, how existing neighborhoods work within that we're trying to figure out. But I wanted to make you aware that we're studying it, trying to understand how it relates to the comp plan. And I think in the memo, there's the timelines, which I don't have off the top of my head for compliance, but we would have, I think, about a year to figure this out. And so it's funky with the timing and challenging, but we're working through it, yeah.
Can we ask questions now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So can you talk about like how this would work in practice with existing neighborhoods? So I'm assuming this zoning supersedes what already exists, but for neighborhoods that are already built out with no plans change in the horizon, how does that work? You know, given also, you know, for example, there may be like a vacant lot in one of those neighborhoods. How would it affect like that case, and how would this actually come into practice for areas that are already developed?
Yeah, I wish I knew more clearly, but you know, so one thing we're trying to understand, for example, is So now we have to allow ADUs citywide, right? Does that automatically bump up our number, not to get to 40 DUs per acre, but does that count for an existing neighborhood? The way that we've understood it is that it is an average across the transit area. So it doesn't mean that existing neighborhoods have to change any zoning, but it means you have to make up for that amount in specific areas. So in order to get to that 40 across the whole area, you would have to look at a higher intensity zoning for like along a commercial corridor or something like that.
And not to beat this one, because I think, to your point, we probably don't know yet, but like, yeah, for like open space, like I think I see Coyote Run open space in there. You know, how would it affect that?
Those areas are exempted. There's
Okay.
exemptions for those types and right away and things
And,
like
and
that.
something to plug, I mean, because you said it had to be balanced, like, is there some, trading that can go in? Like, for example, there's, areas we may not want to be dense within that circle, but right next to it, there might be something that, would facilitate a larger density well. Is that something that's on the table? I know we don't know yet, but I would request that we ask those questions. And I'm thinking particularly of, the area, north of, just north of that circle there that's undeveloped, west of McCaslin.
You can't see my, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. My understanding, and there's more questions than answers. I know this is kind of an empty, we're just getting it and planting the seed, but my understanding, we have asked that question a bit in terms of, can it extend beyond the bubble or beyond the boundary of a lot? And the answer has been yes. It has to be contiguous, and there's all kinds of sort of dimensional things that go with it. But other areas outside the bubble, they have to be contiguous or within a certain distance, I think, for them to count. Yeah.
This will become really important as we keep developing out the comp plan, like understanding how all this works and how it's going to play into the plan. Yeah, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I don't think that we're going to have a deep understanding of exactly how it needs to apply in Louisville in time for the next 6 months at least, which is when we need to develop these future land use scenarios. So we're hoping we can front load and get more clarity from the state so that maybe it aligns with our window. But it's, my opinion, you don't know for sure yet, but one of our future land use scenarios is going to have to be to comply with the state bill, which that would be the most aggressive scenario by far that we would present, is to get to 40 DUs per acre. But yeah, more questions than answers at this time. Yeah, sorry.
I was just wondering, there's, and I don't know the details yet, but obviously there's something going to happen with that Cinnabar and the university buying that, and I assume people are already thinking, I hope, about this, because that's right in that circle.
Yeah, and of note, actually, some of you may be aware, CU is actually hosting an open house on the Cinnabar project on July 25th. So they have purchased the property and they're starting to engage with stakeholders on that. But yeah, that's right in the bubble of where we would try to allow housing and exactly, yeah.
And so in coming months, I guess I'll be asking about how we're handling, because like the dash route, I mean, almost that entire area is developed or open space.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of vacant land there, so I'm not sure how we would meet that requirement, or if that requirement would only be applied to area that's not, that's brown space development, not green space. So yeah, I'm really not sure what to think of the dash corridor.
It was immediately a concern for us too, in the way it's routed. There is language in the bill about sort of local relief and local flexibility through a process. So that may be something we need to engage on, is looking at unique situations like this. But
is there
we share the same concern.
Is there a formula as to why dash is but 228 is not?
Yeah. So the definition of a transit corridor in the bill is any route that has 15-minute intervals of service, essentially, and which this currently does not. In Louisville, the dash doesn't, but it's based on RTD's, what do they call it, System Optimization Plan, which is basically their long-term plan for service. And so we asked for that, and they gave it to us, and they said the future plan is for the dash to be at a 15-minute level of service. And so it's based on that future scenario.
Great, thanks.
Even though it runs through neighborhoods.
And obviously, there's a lot of fudge with unit size, but 40 DUs per acre could be a 5-6 story building with a kind of average approach to unit size, maybe.
I don't know if unit size is defined in there. I think it's units are units.
Right. I mean, so we could end up with a whole bunch of micro units, which could be great, potentially.
I would
in
hope
a
the
lower,
bill has
in
that
a
kind of
lower building,
flexibility.
yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how that could play out.
Yeah, the state's supposed to be issuing all kinds of guidance for sort of the rules and regulations for how you implement this, like guidance for how you calculate the amount. Like, how do you know that your zoning capacity allows for 40 DUs per acre? We're not just, it's not just saying we allow 40 DUs per acre. It's having all of our development standards, setbacks, building envelope, everything. And they drafted it really tight so that you can't sort of circumvent the rules by having, you know, giant setbacks and lower building heights, but then your ordinance says, yeah, we could allow 40 DUs per acre, but in practice, your envelope would never allow that. So it's a whole suite of things that we would have to update with our zoning to make sure we comply with the state bill, and the state's supposed to be giving us the guidance for how to do that. I think by the end of the year was what they said, if I recall. But we're right in there with you. It's messy and it's kind of crazy, but one way to look at it is it's a more opportune time than most in terms of us being right in the middle of a comp plan and looking at this very question. So we'll keep you posted. I think it'll be part of our monthly update.
Oh, Commissioner Bangs.
Yeah, Matt's answered most of my questions, I think, in the course of that conversation, but without sounding overly cynical, fundamentally then this is a disincentive to adding more transit corridors in some respects.
Right, yeah.
And solving.
Yeah.
Am I reading that right?
Yeah, but we don't control that. That's RTD that does that.
Well, but again, part of our comprehensive plan speaks to transit in a fairly significant way, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a big part of our consideration for the community. So, okay, Matt, I realize there's a lot of unanswered questions, and but my other question for you is, what are the ramifications if we struggle to meet the requirement? What does that mean for the city?
Yeah, so I think they softened it in the bill where originally they were going to have, what was it, the Highway Users Tax Fund, which we get, I believe, somewhere around, I want to say it was $600,000 to $1 million a year we typically get from that fund that we put toward road improvements. That was their stick originally in the bill, was that if you don't comply, we're not going to give you that money. I believe they've softened that now, and there isn't a punitive aspect of this. There's just some language in there that basically, this sounds bad, but it sounds like a slap on the wrist and a period where the state would be actively trying to get us to comply. I don't know what the stick is. They removed that funding removal stick, but yeah, there's a whole section in there about if you become a non-compliant jurisdiction, and we as a state have the ability to do this and that. But I know they did soften it. I think that was one of the last minute amendments to the bill to get it passed.
That's not to say that they wouldn't add it back in future.
Potentially in the future,
Right.
who knows, yeah. Commissioner Moline, then we'll come back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to go to just an overall observation or a couple of just overall comments. And the first is thanks. I think thanks for the presentation. And I'm excited that staff is excited enough to open your own 1.5 window of opportunity during the summer. I think that's great. And I guess I sort of maybe share some of the thoughts of, yes, the words are important. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if you can kind of play with some of that stuff as you have this intermediate window open and try and learn. I don't know how you're going to do this necessarily, but try and learn a little bit more about when people say they like small town atmosphere, what actually does that mean? Because I guess one piece of feedback from me is I could see people talking about these values to talk about a proposed development in a year or two and come at it from either side of an issue perhaps even and say, well, no, I'm arguing for something that is going to bring us a safe neighborhood. And so some of these value statements, I don't know, I'm interested to see how we'll be able to take those and translate them into actual kind of land use level decision making. That'll be interesting, I guess. So, and maybe a kind of challenging. So, good luck on that. Truly, yeah. I don't know. So, just
Yeah,
some
no, I would
comments.
like to bring the discussion back around to the comp plan. Commissioner Massey, did you have something final on the?
I did. Can you go back to the map?
Yeah. This,
I-
yeah.
I think this is a keystone map for us, and I think we all kind of went, oh, aha, what does this mean for the comp plan? So I appreciate that you're bringing it to us. And the other ironic thing with RTD is we're always asking RTD for more service. So does that now become a detriment where we're saying, oh, we don't want more service because then we're going to have to build more housing? So there's a great irony in how this all turned out. That's all I wanted to say. And then I was going to say it at the end, but it's relevant here again. You mentioned that the university is holding a visioning session on July 25th, and that is at the rec center from 4:30 to 5:30. And I think it should be on our radar screens if possible to attend and be involved from the very beginning with that, if possible.
Great, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
please
and
go ahead.
I just want to say, I mean, this is uncharted territory here, this new bill, and I do think the timing's interesting, and I hear what people are saying about disincentives to more transit. On the other hand, I mean, affordability is obviously one of the big issues, and we're going to be struggling as a community over the next few years to balance that, like more, because we're going to have more housing in order to address affordability. We live in, a free market, so we can't just mandate it. So this is really going to be a fascinating process over the next few years to figure this out and to get that right balance. But there are some enormous opportunities that this kind of provides us, I think, as well as really, really big challenges, I think, to address the affordability question and the future.
And to add to that part of the challenge here in terms of complying with this, I think will all come down to how does this, as we already talked about, how does this pertain to existing neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Right? Because, not to beat it, but the dash, there's really not much opportunity there. The areas that we have opportunity to add density without perturbing established neighborhoods is not, at least on the northern route map there. It's the circle. There's some opportunity there, and maybe we can, trade and get some goodwill if we add a little bit more than that circle. And, again, it depends on how we have to account for the dash route. So, yeah, opportunity there, but also, do we have any sense on when we'll have any input on how compliance will be handled in regards to existing and established developments?
Yeah, I'd have to look. I think I had some dates in the memo that I don't have off the top of my head. By the end of this year, I believe they're supposed to be giving us that specific guidance. And I believe later this summer, they're supposed to be publishing the official map, which should look something like this. I think their first milestone is, here's your transit areas, and they give us a map. And then a few months later, by the end of the year, they say, here's exactly how you're going to calculate, your zoning needs to be in place to get to that density. And so...
Not necessarily get to, but allow for the potential to get to, right?
Yeah, that's a better way. Yeah, so how does our zoning... And there'll be a period of compliance for whatever that guidance says for us. We don't have to immediately comply. It'll be like in 2 years, your zoning must have the capacity to allow for this many units in these transit areas, and here's exactly how you need to do that in terms of not, trying to limit building envelopes and those things like that. In addition to dwelling units per acre counts. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I was reluctant to bring this to Planning Commission tonight, but it's not something we would normally want to do, is to bring something to you that's so squishy right now. But I think I think
we all appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And I think, to be specific, the question to get ahead on, because there will be some people who are, very concerned about this. I'm aware of a smattering of open lots in existing neighborhoods within that boundary. Does this bill mean that, the open lot in a single family unit, now all of a sudden you could build a massive apartment complex on? Yeah, do you have to rezone that to allow for, and if it's an average, is it going to have to be more than 40 to make up for other area? So
Yeah.
I think that's the question to get ahead on, because that's going to be a contentious discussion within the community.
Yeah, I'm confident that the bill doesn't say, like, if you have a vacant undeveloped lot, you shall upzone it. I think the bill just says, across this whole area, and frankly, I don't know if it's both areas, if it's one city and all your transit areas are an average, or they're individual ones, like does the McCaslin Park and Ride, is that a different calculation than the Dash? I think it is, but I am confident that there's no mandatory upzoning in this bill. It's just like you have to get to that number somehow. So us as a city, I mean, it's a policy decision, but I would imagine we'd look at specific concentrated areas like around the Park and Ride, South Boulder Road, commercial corridor areas, get to that number that way without changing anything in existing neighborhoods. So we're working toward figuring out exactly how to do that, though.
Great, thanks. Can you jump to your questions regarding the vision values? I'm content with the first one, that you've answered questions about the project generally. Did anybody have any specific questions about the project generally? And then I think it's totally, to echo Commissioner Moline's point, thank you for taking that on during the summer. So yeah, I'm comfortable with you moving forward with it for upcoming community engagement as is. That said, I think we could have a discussion a little bit about some of the wording if we want to. I appreciate that council did have a run at it. So I thought what they raised was probably some of the best issues. And it's interesting, right, because we don't see exactly what these bullet points tie to in the language. I think we can guess on a number of them. So I don't think we as a group want to belabor stuff that they've already raised. So I guess I would try to focus our discussion on, is there anything in the existing draft language that you feel like maybe hasn't been addressed by council's input? And so then at that point, I would ask, can we jump back to the draft language and kind of begin our discussion there?
You start with the vision statement? Or
Yeah, thanks.
And there's more council comments in your packet. The slide's just the abbreviated version.
I'll just say I thought that the council captured, I think, everything that I would want to see as far as changes to the language. I thought the language is good as it is. I appreciate the thoughtful comments that council already gave it, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel here on that. They made some really good points.
I guess the one thing I jump on initially, and you've heard me kind of rant a little bit about this, so sustainability inherently includes the now and for future generations. So how we want to use that word, and then when I see it used as environmental sustainability, so that excludes economic and social sustainability concerns. So I think there's massaging around that that would make it a less squishy statement. But other than that, I mean, as is, it works.
Yeah, I think a specific wordsmithing comment from council, at least one council member, was for the last sentence to say, we welcome a vibrant future that respects our past and builds on our small town atmosphere versus preserves. There was some discussion about preserves and what that means.
They talked about us being in a snow globe.
Yes.
Not just gonna keep it the same and preserve it.
This gets at the evolving stuff that we,
Yes.
they made comments about, and I like that. And I think that also gets at what Commissioner Haley always brings up, which is what does small town mean? And it doesn't. Obviously, you're going to be diving more into those concepts this summer to get some more color around what people mean about small town atmosphere. But I like that idea of building on, because I think we are going to have to acknowledge that we can't be a snow globe. We can't be preserved in amber.
We're not Old Town Williamsburg. And that to me is actually, I've never been there, by the way. I look forward to going there someday. But Old Town Williamsburg, or Williamsburg, right? The whole East Coast Civil War stuff. Colonial Williamsburg, right. Thank you. So yeah, the whole respecting our past, it's interesting. I think it's healthy to have it in there. I don't really know even what that means, though.
I don't know what that means either. I mean, what does that mean? Is mining community, or
We're
that
not
we
like-
had storage tech?
So-
or what would-
Let me take a shot at that, because I was thinking about that when we were talking about preserves versus build upon. And so if you include the respect our past, that sort of acknowledges that we have been a smaller community and keeps that in mind as we build. And so that's how I would interpret that. And we're getting into semantics here, but so from that aspect, I think it would be important to keep that.
I agree with that. I think that gets at the concept of, there's a lot of people here who are, I think, a little worried about change. We've seen it in the Facebook group in the last week. I'm really glad I'm not in charge of the road stuff, because, but you guys probably get an earful about that all the time too. But I think there is a lot of angst, just generalized angst about change, and I think we do need to respect that while also helping to bring people into the future. So I like keeping that.
Yeah. And so
Anything else on the vision, or should we jump over to the values? Yeah, please.
So are you going to mess with the language, the part that says preserves our small town atmosphere based on council comment?
The plan, I should have clarified, is take council's comments, take your comments, make adjustments, and then that version is the public version.
Okay.
So I would guess that we would do and builds off our small town atmosphere as an edit, for example, to this last sentence.
Well, could say supports our small town atmosphere rather than preserves, to get rid of that.
Supports, yeah, something other than preserves.
And I think
yeah.
the small town has to be in there, given that's our mantra here, but softening it a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
Right, yes. Yeah.
If you do a curious exercise, if you do a word search in your packet and just say small town from that engagement summary, that's probably like 400 times that comes up.
I mean,
Small town atmosphere, small town feel, small town character. So yes, we certainly wanted to include it.
it's almost impossible to go to a public meeting and not hear it.
Right.
Almost any board or city council. So I guess just to reiterate, I think I would be in favor of changing it to builds upon or supports, assuming we keep the respect our past. And I completely agree that keeping the small town atmosphere, as mentioned, what does that mean? I'm not sure of a more concise way to say that. Well, we want these following metrics, right? You can't really have that in the statement. So I'm okay with leaving the small town atmosphere. And I think we should. I mean, that is a loaded statement, but publicly, it's of great importance to a great number of people. So I think it should be in there in some form. And that seems to be a good way to do it.
The benefit of it is it can mean many things to different people.
I like supports. I mean, it's why I moved here. I can't define it, but that's why I'm here.
Yeah, everyone knows it when they see it, right? So, yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're trying to figure out a way to engage on these questions and like think of examples, like experientially, what does small town mean to you? Does it mean that you can go downtown and find a parking space? That's what I might mean. You know what I mean?
right, yeah.
Or
yeah.
does it mean that buildings are lower scale?
Right.
Does it mean that our population stays steady? What does it mean to you? Yeah, it's intangible. Yeah, you can
Right.
you bump into people you know on the street like that. I think that stuff is more relatable. We're trying to ask those kind of questions. Yeah, challenge, but yeah.
Thanks. Moving into values then.
So in that,
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
sorry, in that first statement, you're already working on that based on councils to say to all people, or you'll come up with something there. I'm going to go pick on the transportation choices one, since that's my favorite topic. And I'm really feeling the pain around Via Appia and the next door comments and stuff like that. Could we just like see what it looks like and try it? I know. But I really think we need to delve into that a bit when we say supports transportation choices. Well, what does that mean to people? I'd really like to get a better handle on saying, we do say in that statement, I like places for all abilities, because that's the part that we're missing out on.
Like to that point, like transportation choices, are they getting at a variety of transportation options? Like I'm not really sure what.
Council talked
Yeah.
about multimodal wasn't a good term, that it feels too jargony. So I don't know that people know what transportation choices mean. The choice to drive, choice to walk, choice to ride. Maybe we need more basic language than jargon that we
Well, but I
planners
think
use.
you just listed some of those choices, right?
Yep.
I think in this case, we would rely on imagery, for example, on this one heavily. Show somebody on a bike, somebody rolling, walking, biking on transit, and then they hopefully would get it. But yeah, we had the same, a lot of jargony terms that we're trying to avoid, multimodal and things like that.
What if it read supports a multitude of transportation options and connections to places for all abilities? I think that gets to the same point, right? With being, to me, that's a bit more clear. But
I like options. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a less stressful word than having to make a choice, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
options.
yeah, it's like a more of a positive, not like you have to decide, like, hey, you can do any of these things. Yeah.
I just want to point out something I really like, which is the supporting development that maintains or enhances our unique quality of life. That unique quality of life, I think, in some ways captures that small town feel in a more descriptive way. And the more we could use that sort of unique quality of life, because that really is, I think, in a way, what people are talking about when they say small town feel, and I like that phrase.
Please.
I'm going to go back up to the second statement, support safe, established, and distinct neighborhoods. So the conversation at council was around the word established. And
wondering
it was
about
saying, well, do we only care about established neighborhoods and we don't care about emerging neighborhoods?
Yeah.
So I thought that the tense for that, I'm not trying to wordsmith it, but I am going to try to play with that word established to say that what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish safe, distinctive neighborhoods rather than support established neighborhoods.
Right.
I don't really
I would
know what
just
that
strike
means.
Established.
What they're I wasn't clear what getting at established means.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the more I read that, again, intent versus what I see, my perspective, it's almost like they're supporting. It's almost like they're trying to maintain what's there and protect, supporting the current neighborhood as is without doing these other things without perturbing what's already there. That's sort of what I'm reading, and I'm not sure that's I'm not sure that is what is intended.
And I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of at the other end of some of these things. I mean, safe. And I realized that was one of the highest. It was one of the highest things.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to be the town in the state that had the least amount of crime. Has that dramatically changed? I'm just curious what it is that people, when they say, I really want a safe town, and
It's the rise of online people sharing things about car break-ins, and I think it's car break-ins
oh,
and porch
And I
pirates.
think it's a culture of fear that's
Culture of fear.
okay.
permeated. Just listen to TV or radio commercials. It's weird.
Media wants to, there's like this feeling now that like our entire country is just a big crime-ridden hellhole. It's just I don't know.
Okay. It's maybe a bigger trend than I'm.
It's
I don't
and
think
it's
it's just
not.
here.
It's again like a subjective term. We'd like more.
Right.
That's where we're at. But so like an experiential way of thinking of it is like that we've been talking about is like, do you feel safe with your kid riding their bike around town? Like, do you feel comfortable with that riding to school or something? Are you worried about having packages left on your front porch? Are they going to get stolen? Are you worried about like things like that? We know we're a safe community, but what is that? And it's scored so highly, and it's an original principle, and it's kind of a given. We definitely, but yeah, this was the one that got the most discussion from council, mostly around the word established, but
I'm
tracking with councils.
ready to drop the word established. Does it ring a bell with anybody as being particularly important?
I'm not sure what we're getting at with that, so I agree.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
yeah.
you're still there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think just this conversation around the safe element just reinforces everything Matt said. Everybody has a different perspective and a different interpretation of what one word means. I mean, in this context, I'm not sure it means everybody's looking for a safer neighborhood, i.e., I'm not sure that they are concerned that safety or crime rates have worsened. But I think a lot of people come to this community because they feel safe and because it has been safe. And perhaps all they're simply articulating is keep it safe, not make it safer. But again, it's nuance, right? It's all subtle nuance, and everybody has a very slightly different experience, obviously, and perspective. So it's we could wordsmith this to death, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's times when I just wonder, like, from a, I guess maybe to, like, from a societal level, does that word have a loaded kind of connotation that actually contradicts that first statement?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I don't know. I'm just, I just wonder. I cannot understand exactly what it's referring to. So anyway. So I just want to help Commissioner Banks. We're talking this evening with Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Thanks.
no problem.
All right, Commissioner Basket.
Jeff, I think you touched on the regional issue. I'm going to throw something out for you, and then you can look at the tape and see if it's useful or not. But I think an additional value statement to address regionalism could be Louisville continues to be a regional partner with Boulder County and its jurisdictions and the metro area. Might save you a little wordsmithing at some point in time if
That sounded good to me.
something
Yeah.
that would be
Jurisdictions
useful.
is such a legal word.
Jurisdictions is a little bit, yeah.
All right,
It's a
I
starting
like the
play
word,
with
but
it.
most people don't.
to work with. That's something to work with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. Thanks. I think that is an important
It's
point that,
cities
that
rather than
council brought it up.
jurisdictions.
Yeah,
It's other
Yeah, yeah.
cities.
yeah.
And they definitely I think there was agreement on the established for the second bullet point not being an ideal term. Just to circle back on that
Yeah.
one. So.
Yeah. Any other comments, please?
So Jeff, you're going to massage these before you take them to the public? Based
Yeah, I
on
think.
our comments and council's comments?
Yeah, that was the idea. Not to change them too much, probably, but things like remove the word established. Like first bullet point, for example. Not saying this is what it's going to be, but to all, welcoming and inclusive to all, for example, it might be an edit. The second bullet point, remove established. Put some more thought into that one. The idea behind that one was, sort of getting to the scenario that you were talking about with the House Bill 1313, like established neighborhoods in the sense of like, frankly, residential of a certain density neighborhoods that have been that way for a while. Like, give some space for that discussion because that is highly valued. But the wording is.
Is cohesive another way to think about like what we're getting at there? Like a cohesive neighborhoods, or maybe that's not quite right either, but like something more about like the quality of the neighborhood itself rather than its longevity or that it's been there a long time, right?
It's
I'm not finding the right word, but
neighborhood character.
yeah,
community
character of the neighborhood, not the length of time it's been there.
You could say support safe and distinct neighborhoods. Oh, I just lost it. Sorry, I thought I had a phrase
I
for
like
you.
it. Go with it.
Support safe and distinct neighborhoods with obvious characteristics or character. So the words you were using, I'm trying to pull those back into it.
Cohesiveness, or I don't know, that's awkward too.
I don't know. Cohesiveness
quite
feels
right.
like cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I don't think we're looking for that.
Not looking for cookie cutter.
Back to my earlier point, environmental sustainability. I'm just inclined to drop environmental from that so that it's more inclusive of or stated as economic, social, and environmental sustainability.
Like that. I think we need to teach people what that means.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
Commissioner Mahaley?
Yeah, I had the same comment, so thank you for more eloquently stating it than I would have.
Anything else? Commissioner Bangs, any other thoughts here? And Jeff, do you have any
Oh,
questions for
but I'm going to blame my COVID positive test for the reason I kept calling Jeff Matt. That's why I'm not at the meeting this evening.
Oh, I hope you're feeling okay.
You get full license. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, however. Or
I feel great, but
Afternoon,
I'm
afternoon.
still positive. So
yeah, all right. Appreciate it. All right.
So there was, I think it was on a comment, so I think it's covered. Is there going to be a point added about affordable housing?
Yeah, there was a fairly lengthy discussion about should we explicitly state affordable housing is a value, or is that
Is that-
embedded in
is
the
that-
first bullet point?
Yeah, is it included and inclusive?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I don't know for sure if that's going to land as a specific edit. We welcome your feedback on that, or becomes the subtext underneath it somehow, or through imagery or something. We convey that concept.
I ask, this is getting again semantics and wordsmithing again. I ask only mostly because I've been thinking about the term affordable housing versus attainable housing. But I think your point you made is a bigger one. I think it is included in inclusive. So I think we're covered. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
With that, then, we'll call it a wrap
Very
on
helpful.
this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for both of those two vitally important
Thank you.
topics.
Appreciate it.
Any additional planning commission comments? Seeing none, any remaining staff comments, and credit to the staff who are still here. You can sit in both places. Yes. Noting that we do not have anything scheduled for next month, it looks like August we'll be discussing comp plan, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think you can expect a monthly at minimum comp plan update as a recurring item, but we expect at least one or two cases, land use cases for next meeting.
Oh, for July meeting?
For
Okay.
July, yes, yeah.
So we are on the books for July then.
That's the plan, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.